next part of the hive is the box, collectively called the box, but depending on its purpose, it's either called the brood box or the super or honey super. They're both the same, except they just have different functions. Now, it's made of 4 pieces of wood, and they're screwed or stapled or nailed, usually glued. The most common method is a half lap join, although sometimes there are the fingertail or finger joints or dovetails, which would be like that. They are a standard size, so usually 5'10" this way, 4'10" this way, and the wood is dressed, usually pine, so 20 mil. So you ended up with an internal dimensions of 365 by 465. Now these 3/4 hives are 190, and the full depth 250 mil high. Now the bottom is completely smooth and flat, and on the top they have 2 grooves or ledges to hang the frames on. And there's invariably handles on each side. Sometimes there might be handles, 4 handles. Sometimes there will be a piece of wood that has been screwed on, but this way it keeps it smooth so you can stack it against each other. Now the standard hive is 10 frames. So you've got 10 frames, and around the frames are what is known as bee space, which is 6 to 9 mil gap, and in that gap, any less and they will propolize it up, any more and they'll build burr comb and again block it up. So they won't build in a space between 6 to 9 mil. 10 mil is usually okay. So you've got the space all around here and all around here and here, which they won't build, and that way that's how you get the removable frames. Now there is another size which is quite uncommon, but a friend of mine uses, and it's 8 frames. Now this is narrower and lighter, so hers are, you can get full depth and 3/4 as well, so it's just a lot lighter to use. Although a lot of people say that if you're going to go for lighter, you might as well go for half depth rather than the 3/4 by 8, because then you need a separate, different type of base, different type of lid, different type of hive mat, different queen excluders. Now speaking of which, to stop, when you've got the brood in the bottom, you don't want the bees will naturally go up, so eventually over time the brood nest will come up and they will slowly come up, and then the queen will be laying amongst the honey, so you don't want any brood in your honey, so you've got to keep the queen down. So we use what we call a queen excluder. That's a very specific size. If it's damaged, it's no good, so you would chuck it out if the metal gets bent. But that just sits on top, so what you do is you'd have it there, and then the box would go on top, and that way the drones can't go up because they are bigger, but also the queen won't go up. The queen will always stay down there, and it's just the workers that can come up and to sort out the honey. So most people would use a queen excluder. There is a thing about what they call the honey break, where the queen will not go past honey, sealed capped honey, to lay. So if you've got a box of honey, she will not lay in there and she'll not go above, but as soon as it's cleared, she'll slowly work her way up. There are different types of queen excluder. There's the metal frame with metal with wood frame. You can get just the metal without the wood frame, so it just sits on there. A bit like this plastic one, which is the cheapest one of all. It's very thin and it just sits on. And then the only problem with this is that, seeing as the frames are flush, pretty much flush at the top, once that goes on there, any bees on there will get squashed. And then once you put that on there like that, the weight of it will squash them down, and it will tend to get propolized onto there. So the next one up would be a plastic one with a lip, and that one can go on here. This one has the advantage that it has an entrance as well, so you can have an entrance, an extra entrance, so in the middle of summer when it's busy, the bees can come in. It'll be quicker for them to come in and out. So that is the boxes. This is the Langstroth hive. It's the standard hive in New Zealand. In other countries they have different standards, like the National, the Ware, different ones. But this one, all the parts are interchangeable because they're all the same size. The outside dimensions are 510 long by 410 wide, and the walls are 20 millimetres thick. So it will always have exactly the same internal dimensions. I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. So we start off with the base. The base comprises of the part that the hive sits on and the runners to keep it off the ground, and an entrance which is usually about 10 mil thick and runs across the whole length of the hive, but it can be reduced down. Come the winter, you can add pieces of wood or have different guards to reduce the entrance to protect against wasps and vermin, and also to stop against the cold. One of the standards is a solid base. This is the runner's solid floor and 10 mil thick round the edge. This is so that the hive can sit on top, and there will be a gap for the bees to come in, and there will also be a 10 mil gap below from the frames. That is very common, certainly amongst commercials, but more commonly amongst hobbyists is the mesh base. You can buy these or you can make them. They're the same layout, same basic principles as the solid base. They can have the runners going long ways or across ways, it doesn't matter. They also always have a landing board so that it's easier for the bees to come in, land, and come in or come out and take off. The mesh is stainless steel so it doesn't rust, and the rats and mice can't chew through it. The holes are too small for bees or wasps to get through, but they're big enough for the mites to drop down through, which is part of what helps you treat or mitigate grower mites. You can also make a core flute board that slides in underneath and blocks it off. That way no cold air comes through, but you do get the mites still dropping down. Another type of base is a plastic one called the Hive Doctor. Now this is vented like this one here. It has different colour or different shapes at the front, the entrance, to help guide the bees in, so that stops drift amongst other hives if they're close together. And it's got this little gate here. So when it's like this, it's closed and bees can't get in, but when it's open, the bees can come in. It's quite a small entrance. But another feature of this is that it has these lugs here, here and here, which holds the top box in place, so it won't slide around. Whereas one of the issues with these is, certainly if you're moving it, the tops can come off, which can be quite disastrous, which is why you strap them down when you're moving. But also you will find that the bees will propylize any gaps or cracks or anything and glue it in place. So that's the bases.